You like that one? All right, let's talk about CPU coolers. We're going to talk about two of them anyways, so we'll do CPU coolers first.
There's one that you guys really beat up that I'd love to talk about, and we happen to be working on it right now.
Yeah, so let's talk about CPU coolers. So the main idea with this is when you should actually use an aftermarket cooler because, well, most of the time you really don't need one, but it does benefit you sometimes. And we're probably going to be talking about like certain CPUs that do make sense, especially overclocking. But for builds like this, yeah, I was using the stock cooler, and also our other builds. And that's what Jackson's going to talk about. Some of our i3 builds we've done with stock coolers. They don't really need them.
Yeah, you guys absolutely like shit on us for using those. So I'm just going to go and open up and say any build that you put an aftermarket CPU cooler on is probably going to perform slightly better.
Yes.
It's slightly to a lot better, okay?
So like, I can put the stride in.
Oh, yeah. You want to go for it?
Yeah.
So like the i5-2400 is a true quad core. It can't overclock. It boosts, but not much. Do you need an aftermarket cooler? Absolutely not. Can it help a little bit? Yes, because CPUs, they have a base clock and a boost clock. So when your CPU goes into boost mode, I just realized I'm like just right here. When your CPU goes into boost mode, or beast mode as they like to call it, it has to have a good temperature. Otherwise, it does what they call thermal throttling. And when it thermal throttles, it gets over, let's say, like 85 Celsius. Your CPU starts to downclock. It lowers the voltages because it goes, oh, crap. I'm about to fry the CPU. That's what the motherboard says. That's what the motherboard says to the CPU. Oh, man. I'm about to burn you up, bro. I need to slow down a little bit. So it downclocks it, and then you get lesser performance. You see that a lot in laptops is a really great example. So, yes. Better cooling would help with that. However, with something like this, the stock cooler is going to perform, I would say, almost the exact same as if we were to put a liquid cooler on it because you can't overclock it. You can't get any extra voltage through it. It's not really trying to do much more than it can stock. So, long story short, you're confusing me. How much? Shut up, Joseph.
Joseph, get out of here. I would say, like, honestly, like, for those i3 builds, I understand people thinking it looks ugly, and if you want to pay the extra $30 for, like, a Hyper 212 and you think that looks better...
Aesthetically pleasing,
yeah, go for it. It does look better. Like, I don't blame you. Like, I mean, Zach's build in there is... a 10400.
A 10400.
10400 build. That really doesn't need another cooler. I mean, it does help it for sure. Especially like an i5. You're going to pay a little bit more money. I can understand going with the other cooler, like the i5. It would make sense. And we just have like a tower air cooler in there, and it makes it look a lot better. So, like, I'm not going to bash you all for going for it. It's not a bad decision, but it's just not
when people roast you. Yes. That's mainly what we're going after. The people who are like, oh my god, Intel stock cooler.
Cable, yes, yay, nay.
No.
I'll grab it.
You got it? Oh, man. So sweet of you.
I got it.
I'm ready to keep ranting.
Just keep talking. Keep talking about coolers, bro. Just talk about CPUs that you can overclock and which ones.
Yeah, so like if you guys ever get like an Intel K processor, those typically don't come. So here's my rule of thumb. If it comes with the CPU cooler, it's designed to run with the CPU cooler. You're likely going to be fine running a CPU cooler. Now, if it doesn't come with a CPU cooler, there's typically a reason, and that reason is they know their CPU cooler is not strong enough for it. They want you to get an aftermarket cooler. When that's the case, get an aftermarket cooler. I mean, you kind of have to. So get a CPU, liquid cooler. Get a CPU air cooler that's a little bit beefier. But if it comes with a cooler, they have designed that processor to be able to run with a cooler. Now, are there exceptions? Yes. We actually recently did a 3800 XT build that came with the stock
and it was having some
Max
issues.
Cooler, and it was downclocking because that, honestly, I mean, that's a pretty baller CPU, and it really boosts. Like, it really boosts when it can, but it wasn't boosting very well because it was getting hot. So that is a case where, yes, the stock cooler is not enough. But did it work? Yes. And did the build perform amazing? Yes. So, yeah, you know, I mean, it's the main thing that I'm getting at is don't roast people for using a stock cooler on a processor that comes with one. If they're using like an overclockable processor, like a K processor or a very high-end one, then you can roast them. But if they're just using like an i3 or, you know, something goofy like that, like where you don't really need anything bigger than stock cooler, just let them live their life, man.
Let them live their life.
Let them be them.